Don't Be Alone with Jake Hogan is brought to you by Prime Video, who present Etoile from the executive producers of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and Gilmore Girls. Magnetic and alluring, raves RogerEbert.com, one of the boldest and freshest series of the year, starring Luke Kirby, Charlotte Gainsbourg, and Lou Delage. Etoile is Emmy eligible in Outstanding Comedy Series and all other categories, available at consideramazon.com.
Yo, what up? It's Kenya Barris. I'm about to be on Don't Be Alone with Jake Hogan. He hates being alone. I know this for a fact. We're going to make sure we're not alone together. We're going to be alone together. That does not come out right, but we're going to do some things together alone. Anyway, watch it today.
Don't be alone with Jake Hogan.
Hi, welcome to Don't Be Alone with Jake Hogan. I'm your lovable host, Jake Hogan, and I'm really thrilled that you're here. I'm getting so much positive feedback about the show, and the shows have been great, and they're getting greater, and I'm really happy that you're joining me and my guests whenever you do. Sometimes it's when you're exercising, sometimes it's on your commute, sometimes it's as you're falling asleep, apparently. I've heard that. So whatever I can do to make your life better, fantastic. I really enjoy it, and thanks. And if you can, please remember to subscribe to this thing. It's very easy. Go to YouTube, press subscribe. It costs you nothing. And if you can recommend it to a friend, even better. And better yet, communicate with me at dbawjk@gmail.com. That's dbawjk@gmail.com. That's my email address. You send your compliments, your criticisms. I'm open to all of it. And send your questions to my guests. Life questions, big life questions. I know you don't know the guest. That's okay. Today we have an amazing show for you, as usual, per usual. My friend, Kenya Barris, who has become a show business stalwart. He's been this amazing giant in show business. When I knew him, he was just a guy in a writer's room. But he created Blackish and all the spin-offs of that, like Grownish and Youngish and Bluish and whatever else. All the ish shows are Kenya's. He's also started his own show, which is a Black AF. He's been writing and directing movies and doing a million things, podcasts, and it's going to be interesting to track his journey from just regular comedy writer to sort of mogul. And maybe he has some hints for me on I'm not yet a mogul. I've been doing it longer than he has, and I'm not yet a mogul. But Kenya will tell us the secret. We will be right back with Kenya Barris right after this.
Don't be alone with Jake Hogan.
I'm very happy to see you.
Happy to see
and
you.
very grateful that you came.
I'm super happy to be here.
That was really nice. And
I may not be here for work for you, so I'm glad I'm here.
The fact that you're an hour late means nothing. And I don't blame that on your people. I blame that completely on you.
It's on me.
I mean, the audience doesn't know this, but that we met many years ago. I don't know if it's 20 years ago?
Probably.
Okay, 20 years ago. And you were a funny writer on a little sitcom. And back then you were very open to what was going on, but you were very interested. I mean, even then you had an eye on big things. Like you talked about, like you had Collabo was a company that you started then, and you were creating shows, the model shows. You had a lot of things going on, always.
Yeah.
So
I was quiet in the room. I was trying to be quiet. Dan Fogelman, who's our friend of ours, who's become the head of the town.
Yeah.
He wasn't even, I was his first show. He was like parking cars or something before that.
Right.
And or doing something he probably wasn't parking cars too. But but like it was such a funny group of people. You know what I'm saying? All those people have gone on and
not all, but many of them.
A lot of them have gone on. I see them, and Fogelman's kept quite a few of them around, but I got to learn a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying, being on that show.
Yeah, let's talk about that. What are the best things you learned on the show? What are the worst things you learned?
So I had been a writer's assistant before. You affectionately named our writer's assistant because you didn't want to learn their names, Tippity and Tappity.
Right.
Can we switch out Tappity and get Tippity in here?
Right, Tippity and Tappity, sure. Because how can we dehumanize people? What's the best way to dehumanize people?
Tippity, tell Tappity. No, but I felt like I learned. I had been a writer's assistant, so I kind of understood that there is a great way, and I always tell people if they want to get in writing, there's no better way than being a writer's assistant or a script coordinator.
Yeah.
I know all the programs and all that shit, but it really comes down to like being in the room, being in the game. You know what I'm saying? Even if it's like being a practice player.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you're a practice player and you can just go crazy.
Well, the real thing about being a writer is you have to sit there and write. Like you have to sit and write. And writer's assistants have to write. Like it's not, when you're a writer's assistant, you don't have to really concern yourself if it's good or if it's bad. It's just accurate. You just write it down. And you're a writer, you also have to try to not concern yourself too much whether it's good or it's bad.
Yes.
And you just have to write it.
Yes.
And so it's really good practice for that.
It really is. And it was crazy when you'd sit there, and the writers just sit down. I understood because I used to do it, but like we'd have hilarious, like room rattling laughter, and they'd get two in it. Right. And we're like, does someone have to die for you to write that down? Does someone have to literally start bleeding before you realize that was probably something we should put in the script?
Don't want to make that mistake of write the wrong thing down. That's the thing that they're most afraid of.
But they're getting a show because sometimes you're getting some of the brightest, most charismatic, funny people in the room putting on a stand-up set for you.
Can be. It also can be brutal. Like it used to be, not anymore because they fire people now for that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But it used to be also rough.
Very rough.
Yeah.
Very rough. I still like a rough room. I still like to get my friends who I can have a rough room. Because my big thing is like, as long as it's not malicious.
Right. Well, that's the thing that's missing now. People didn't understand, like Tippity and Tappity, if I said that to people, I hope they understood my intent was not truly to dehumanize them, but
they liked it too.
Was trying to be fun. They liked it because they were trying to be funny. Yes. How funny is it to dehumanize people?
It's hazing.
It's a joke. It was a joke on a joke. In other words, it's the intention. If you assume somebody says something with good intention, you can hear a lot. Yes. If you assume that it's just what they said, then you can't hear anything.
I agree. It's hazing, and I think that my favorite comedians, some of them I've had to have conversations with recently, but like for the most part, the brilliance was brilliant. And then sometime, I don't know if it's success or if it's personal demons, it crosses over into malice.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's cross back. I'm like, you're the best. You're the best in the world. Like let's just cross a little bit back. You know what I'm saying? And just I think you need people they need people around them that's gonna say that.
Right. So you feel like you can bring people back from the dark side
if I'm close enough to them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Or if they'll listen to me.
Right.
Because oftentimes they get sycophants and people who are on the payroll, and it's like, let him go. And I'm like, but you're gonna let him go off the cliff. You know what I'm saying? Like, bring it back. You don't need to be malicious. You know what I'm saying? You can be just as funny as you were. Just edge it back a little bit. You know.
People who work with you or feel confident to speak truth to power?
I hope so. I've been working with basically the same group. I mean, we get writers' rooms of different people, but in general, I usually try to keep at least 2 or 3 of there's probably like 6 or 7 dudes. I at least try to keep 2 or 3, if not all of them, together. Because I think they're the ones who'll be like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, when you're too off board, or they'll be like, you look sleepy,
right?
You know what I'm saying? Or like, what happened this weekend? Or like, what's up with you and Bo? Like, what's happening? Like, they'll ask you.
That's a long conversation.
They'll ask you the real questions. You know what I'm saying? Which I think you really need to be asked in order to keep you in line.
Oh, that's good. I feel that way too. The writer's room used to be that place where you can talk about your life, talk about things you had to in order to get through, get interesting ideas about what's going on. Now, when I go from place to place, I have to feel it out, and for the most part, it's just like, what would the character say, and what would they do? And
I hate that.
I know
that's the part of our business that, like, Phil Rosenthal used to have. Those guys stayed forever, right? By the time it was over, everybody was an EP. You know what I'm saying? People even got pieces. You know what I'm saying? But like, it was Monday morning, and I was like, Phil, is this true? I was like, it was Monday morning. Wasn't about story. It was like, what'd you guys do this weekend?
Yeah,
because that's the best way to get into the story. Yeah, everybody just told their stories from that weekend.
Well, we should be doing Phil Rosenthal's podcast because he's got a good one. So like, we should leave here and go see what Phil is having, or what his great podcast.
Yeah.
So Kenya, let me ask you something. You and I both kind of grew up in LA. You grew up in like Inglewood-ish, and
born in Pacoima, grew up in Inglewood.
all right. It feels to me when I met you, it feels to me that you always were destined to be a show business guy. Now, I don't know why I feel that way, because history doesn't necessarily say
Yes.
where you're from and the people that you grew up with aren't all in show business. So what is it about you, do you think, that attracted to this, thought you could do it? You know, you had a certain amount of confidence to do it, but you're not like overly, you have confidence, but you also have a little bit of humbleness to you at the same time, which of course makes you endearing. But you really do. Like, you have both of those things going on at the same time. That's a rare combination. What do you think pushed you here and you rocketed you to success?
I wanted to be a doctor. My kid's mom's a doctor. Organic chemistry happened, and I was like, so this isn't for me.
Same thing to me. I considered being a doctor, and I went to organic chemistry and failed immediately and said, okay.
I had never failed anything
in
my life in class, in school. I was getting like 9s.
Right.
Like, I was like, it is literally Greek to me. Like, I don't know what's going on. So I knew I couldn't do that. And then I liked writing. I liked doing jokes, wrote a play, got produced while I was in school. Started going to like stand-up clubs. Earthquake had this great club in Atlanta. Would see certain comics.
Were you doing stand-up while you were in college?
I was doing open mics, trying to do open mics, but realized I could hear other comics' voices.
Right.
Threw out some jokes to some comics. They'd use my jokes, maybe give me 20, maybe give me nothing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But realized I could hear other people's voices. Kind of realized that was like maybe something to do. At the time, my wife's uncle was this guy, Ralph Farquhar. He had created Moesha and a bunch of stuff. This lady, Felicia Henderson, had a show. He introduced me to her. Got on as a PA. Steve Stark was the head of the Paramount Writers Program. He helped me get into that. Just got into the program thing or whatever. Really realized that in TV in particular, especially that time, TV writers were like God. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it was a cool time to be a TV writer.
It was.
For sure.
And like seeing those guys like come in and get lunches, which I completely fucked up every day. But like, sneaking in and hearing, sometimes the writer system would let you sub in for a second. Or just hearing the jokes come from the room, seeing them work on the floor.
Right.
Tape nights, you know what I'm saying, where you really got to see the stars shine. You know what I'm saying? You were great tape night. But just seeing that, you kind of get addicted to it. Like, I went to Black College, went to the Summer to Clark, but I had the same mentor as Dr. Eichelberg, as Spike Lee. I thought I wanted to be a director. Realized directing, you need money to get people together and this and that. With writing, you just need a laptop. You know what I'm saying?
You could be a one-man show with the writer.
You really could. And then seeing, as anybody who ever PAs, I always tell them, like, read everything that comes across your desk. And one day the budget came across my desk. And I looked up and I was like, this dude makes what?
Right.
And I was like, this dude sleeps in his office every day. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, I remember doing this. I was like, it would take me 3 years to make, but I realized that was what, something that was, you could have a lot of control of. I wasn't into the movie thing because I was at the TV.
Right.
And we actually had, particularly during that time, we got to create, execute, edit, and then put out our things within a certain amount of time. And the timeliness of it and the things we could talk about really attracted me.
Also, you have this other skill that you still have to this day. And it is, you're very good with people. You have people skills. You're very kind to me, unnecessarily so. I thank you for that. But
You're very kind.
But you're, it's lovely that you credit me with things I don't deserve, which I always appreciate.
Many credits.
But everybody loved you. I mean, it's not a person, from Norman Lear to Eddie Murphy to, like, you get along with people in a way that a lot of people don't. Where does that come from?
So I think I grew up in a burning house.
Yeah.
Craziness, abuse and toxicity and all the kind of stuff that goes around with that. But I think when you grow up in a burning house, people say, like, you're good at putting out fires. I'm like, yeah, because I grew up in a burning. It's not a skill you want to necessarily have, but you get it. But I definitely feel like it gives you what I think is missing in so many people, empathy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And sympathy is different than empathy. Empathy is you felt it. Sympathy is you can understand how that might feel. You know what I'm saying?
All right. Well, who tests? I'm sure you've been in situations where you're directing a movie or you're directing something and a star or a crew member is testing your empathy.
Many times.
So,
I think that conversations actually really help a lot.
Right.
When you're actually able to sort of say, like, maybe it's an after work call. Maybe it's like you want to have a drink. Maybe it's like a knock on the trailer. The trailer knocks don't necessarily work as much because they're still in their zone, whatever that is. But like some moments like, bro, like this is not going well.
Don't Be Alone with Jake Hogan is brought to you by the good people at Prime Video who present The Boys. In Season 4, we recognize a grim reality in America. A strong man has risen to power. He has rewritten the rules of government. He has weaponized fear, and he has demanded absolute loyalty, all while his worshippers cheer him on. Sound familiar? Rolling Stone says, the show's depiction of America comes off as more true to life than any other. And Vanity Fair warns, the alarm bells are ringing, as they should be, for all of us too. Not a documentary, but still for your consideration. The Boys is Emmy eligible in Outstanding Drama Series and all other categories, and available for TV Academy members at consideramazon.com. So consider it.
Don't be alone with Jake Hogan.
So, but how do you take that moment when somebody who is acting like a big baby or irrationally or whatever, they're in a moment and you're trying to be empathetic to whatever that moment is, but you want to get your day done. Part of me is like, I'm looking at the watch saying, I got to get the day done. I got to find a way to get this person out of the trailer. I'm not as empathetic in that moment because I'm more concerned with the 200 other people that have to work. Can you turn that off and really get into their head?
Well, what I've realized that somebody told Julia Dreyfus told me something, and I was like, and it's crazy because they both were on Seinfeld. Jason Alexander had a similar thing. Jason Alexander had one of the best moments in my life, right? I was working on a show with him, and he came to the writer's room. We were about to have a table read, and he goes, guys, we're like, oh, it's Jason. He's like, this script, this isn't it. And we're like, oh. And he was like, we're 5 minutes from the table read. We're like, shit. And he's like, we're going to have to work on this. And he would go to the table read, and as you would imagine, he's an actor, he didn't like it, and he's going to tank it, right? He doesn't just not tank it.
Right.
He sells gold out of it. I mean, it's one of our best table reads.
Right.
He is, executives are crying, writers are laughing, you know what I'm saying? We're high-fiving. Right. We go back to the room, we're like, what a lemons to lemonade moment, right? And he comes in, he's like, guys, we still got to work on this. Right. And we were like, absolutely, sir. Right. Because the idea that actors are magic, and instead of being petulant and pouty, he took and used his magic and lifted what was shit. He shined shit. You know what I'm saying? And he did it in a way that only he could do it. And so we were more than happy to work on that script and get it to exactly what he wanted to get to. Julia Dreyfus told me we were doing something, and it was, it was hard or whatever, and she was like, this guy's been doing this this has been happening for a long time. You're not going to be the person to stop it. Right. What you can do is stop it for now. You know what I'm saying? You can, and the way that you can do that is, if you can't empathize because you haven't quite been in this person's shoes, you can sympathize with maybe what's happening at the moment. And it made me really realize, like, at the moment when you can talk to people, and I think some people actually need to be said this to, like, dude, people are like turning on you out there. You know what I'm saying? These people want to come to work every day for you, but they're kind of starting to turn on you. And I don't want them to turn on you because, and like, people actually respond to that because sometimes they don't have a lot of people around. They don't
feel threatened by that? I would feel threatened a little bit. Like, the people around you are turning on you. I would feel a little threatened.
Everyone's in service to the project, right? And I think if you can remember that,
everyone should be in service of the project.
They should, and if you can remember that, you can say, okay, this isn't going to change. Let's pivot. You know what I'm saying? I think that's where I think TV writers actually make particularly multi-camera TV writers we make really good producers and really good directors because you learn how to improvise.
Right. You can change
and how to
moment.
pivot in the moment.
Yeah.
And so you could realize that this moment is not going to work.
Right.
How do I sort of jump ahead and realize what I'm going to do in editing? How can I get around this? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
How can I do that? No, let's not keep anyone here any longer. Let's not make this any worse.
Right.
Let's get out of this. I can fix this in editing. I can cut this. I can figure this out another day. I can pick it up if I have to. I can, swing around and get covered. I think those types of moments, when you have to get to it, that helps.
I guess I was asking also a slightly deeper question, which is we're both, if you grow up the way you're saying you grow up, and I only doubt you like 20%. But if you grow up, then you're scarred. You have this stuff that's going on. And then, your filter of life and world, and especially family, comes through that mess.
Yes.
And then you can't help but let a little bit of that influence one way or another. So like you have to either you're raising your family or having your family in reaction to what you had, right? You're trying to go fight against that.
Yeah.
Or you're embracing it, maybe too much of it flows in, but you're constantly measuring yourself up against what you went through.
I think for me, like it's sad, it's sob story. Like I have brother who passed of leukemia, brother schizophrenia, brother stabbed in an alley on Thanksgiving, mom broken jaw while she was pregnant with me, abusive dad went to jail with me in the house for selling drugs, mom shot, all this stuff that feels like, what? You know what I'm saying? But
Same story. Exactly the same.
Looking in the mirror.
Identical, exactly.
But like, I realized that I still had a really loving, my dad loved me.
Of course.
He loved me the best he could. My mom really loved me.
That's exactly it. Best they could.
Yes.
The best they could. That means a lot.
It
so
does.
while you're hurting and saying, I wish this and I wish that, the adult part of us flies in and goes, look at where this person came from.
Yes.
Look at how they grew up. And
Yes.
best they could means a lot.
That the tragedy and the toxicity that your parents had, they didn't mean to, but they passed it down to you.
Right.
And you probably in some way are passing it on to your kids.
We are. I mean, that's my big fear.
Yes.
That's exactly my big fear. That's exactly what's happening. I am definitely passing on other things.
But give them the right
Yeah.
to talk to you about it.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing. Is like me being able to forgive myself for what I did, but mostly I forgive my mom
Right.
and my dad, and realize that they did the best they could, and then I'm doing the best I could. And the difference and the change and the cycle that you can break
Right.
is you can allow your kid to talk to you
Right.
about what they're experiencing.
What are your kids' biggest criticisms of you?
I'm too big of a personality.
Me too. I get that same thing.
I'm too big of a personality, and I think like, why let you guys do what you want? You guys curse at me. You guys do this, like and I'm like, and they're like, that's great, and they love that. You know what I'm saying? And they can be honest with me about certain things, but sometimes everything's a joke.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Sometimes everything's a joke, and I'm like, it's funny to everyone else. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Around, but
Right,
that
but not
person
them. Yeah.
feels it really heavily, and so I have to sort of like, I'm trying to meet her. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because that big personality is my defense mechanism of how I dealt with the things that were happening to me.
100%. My wife, Brown, as you know and love, she has told me on many occasions recently, can't you just say yes or here or just hear me without making a joke? Does everything have to be fodder for a joke?
Yes. My daughter, when she told me that she was gonna go, she told me that her fiance now, that she was going to visit her, she was like, well, we're not just friends. And I go, I guess I know now.
Right.
And she's like, do you care? And I go, I mean, do you care?
Right.
And she's like, I don't know. I was like, I'm more upset that she's white, that she's not a guy.
Right.
And she laughed. And I think in that moment, it was great. But when I repeat that moment, or I say it around other people, or I talk, it's like, Dad, come on, you're making this, it's your thing. Tell
me about this podcast you were doing with the greatest podcaster of all time.
We're doing a second season. I'm a huge fan of Malcolm.
Right, Malcolm Gladwell, who did Revisionist History,
yes,
which is probably the greatest podcast in the history of podcasts.
And his books, which changed my life. You know what I'm saying? From Tipping Point to Outliers to all these things. What the dog saw, but I learned there's some moments where you just sit back and just learn,
Mm-hmm.
and I sit back and just watch him and just learn. But it's kind of like double dutch. We kind of like know.
But
when,
how did you get how did you get in the room?
I met him at a restaurant. I just kind of approached him at a restaurant and did
Right.
the like. I never do this, you know what I'm
Right.
saying? But he could not be sweeter. We exchanged information and kept in touch. He was beyond supportive to me. I did this show on Netflix called Black as Fuck. He sent me a personal note and then text me right after I got like some bad reviews or whatever. And people started really liking the show. And he was one of the first people who vocally spoke about it, and we became.
I wrote you a note when you did this show. I didn't get an invitation to a podcast with you right then.
We're doing
I
it
said
now.
you're good. I said the show's good. I said who knew you could act. I did a whole thing.
Right. No one knew I could act. And no one
Whatever.
still does know I can act. But he made me feel it was he got what I was trying to do,
Right.
which was satire, which Black people don't really get a chance to do. You know what I'm saying? We don't get to do satire a lot. And that was one of the biggest things that I was like, you got it. Like that was the thing that was really the mold I was trying to break, was like to do satire.
It felt like, in a very good way, a very interesting perspective that only you could bring to it's the Carl Reiner of it all. Carl Reiner said, do a show that only you could do. And you did it with Blackish, but you also did it with Black AF.
Well, Larry David convinced me to actually be in it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Michelle Deschamps, who I worked with Larry David forever, got Larry, who I'm just like a super fan of, got Larry on the phone with me. And we had a great actor cast. Rashida Jones was like, I really want you to do it. And I was like, what? And she was like, the takes you. And I was like, I'm not. And then I got Larry on the phone, and I was like, how do I get prepared for this? He was like, just do you. And he was like, use the auditions. And he said, when you audition people, use those as your rehearsals. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And he was like, improv with these people in the rehearsals. And I was like, and that became the technique. It's like when we got properly in for rehearsals, if I could play with them, then I could act with them.
Right.
And because I directed it, and one of the greatest things I think The Office I stole from The Office and probably other things did it, but that whole sort of like mockumentary, like long lens, like people don't know what you're talking, but they're actually getting you. Like it allows you not have to do turnarounds. Right. You know what I'm saying? Because turnarounds are where you really have to be an actor. Yeah. When you have to do like this.
Do it again.
Yes,
do it again. have the soda in the same hand. Yes. Yeah, all that stuff.
So not having to do turnarounds really helped me. You know what I'm saying? We shot it in twos and this and that, and I really made it so it could feel more natural. And it made me a better writer. Like you do stand up, whenever you actually have to perform, it actually helps your writing
for sure
in a different way. And I tell every writer, if you can get a chance, I don't care if it's go take a class at UCB or
definitely take an acting class. Yes. It helps because most writers who don't act think, why don't they say it the way I wrote it? Why don't they say it the way that's in my head? Yes. And they don't realize that's not how that works.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah. And that person, you might have wrote it on a cross. You might have wrote it in a way that makes a person like uncomfortable in the response. Right. And so the idea of like trying to now write and be like, a person has to talk to another person and has to do something while they're doing that. You write it differently. You're like, you open up your writing.
It improves your ability to write blocking within the
100%.
So that's fantastic. Who's the greatest that you've worked with? The greatest
improvisational person I've worked with is Jonah Hill.
Okay.
He is like nothing else I've ever seen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I was going to say he's probably the grumpiest too, but
he has moments, but but because he's a director and a writer, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And we actually are friends. The times that we actually had moments, I called him and he'd be like, yeah, I did do that. And I'm like, what? You're admitting this? You know what I'm saying? And he was like, yeah, I do this. And he actually he actually did a great documentary. Therapy was a big part of it.
I've seen that documentary. It's amazing.
Everyone should see it. Yeah. He also has had a kid now, and he's like, one of my closer friends. We had to hit our bumps when he did our movie, but like he's one of my closer friends. Like in this because like I've seen and we experienced it together. I was talking about my kids, and he came back to me one day. And he was like, you told me what kids did for you. He was like, I didn't believe you. Right. He was like, and I've seen the change. And he's seen the change in me. He helped me in so many ways because he supported me in ways that he didn't have to, and sometimes he got mad at me in ways he didn't have to. But like, and sometimes I would say I did a movie with him and Eddie Murphy, and people would get mad. Eddie might be a little late or this and that. But when you've seen it, when you're looking at that thing and you're like, oh, that's a movie star.
Oh, for sure. Well, I mean, Jonah, yes. And Eddie, oh my God.
Eddie's surgical. People don't realize that. Eddie, in terms of what you put on that page, it's almost Ron Burgundy-ish. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's going to remember his lines. So if the lines work, he is surgical. He told me something. He was like, when you get me on a movie, if a guy gets me on a movie and he gets me for 7 weeks, he was like, look, if you can't make something out of this, that's on you. He's like, because I'm going to give you my same 28, 8, and 8.
Right.
I'm going to put up my points. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
If you can't get something out of that, then you can't win. And he was surgical. And him and Jonah bouncing off of him, it was some of the stuff that never made the movie, but I was like, oh my God, I'm so blessed to be having these dudes together.
It was really fun. And you people, it was so fun to see them together. I worked briefly with Eddie on The Nutty Professor. And
Shrek. Were you there?
Yeah, but I was really sort of a Mike Myers camp for that. But it's sort of like he's sitting there like, not, I guess, the movie star, but just like, you know, this Nutty Professor, he's bearing the weight of this movie on his shoulders, and these writers come in, and he's looking at me and my partner Wally, and looking at us, looking at up and down, like, so you guys worked on The Simpsons, huh? Like, he analyzed us within 30 seconds, said, okay, and then we're ready to hear stuff from us, and knew what to take, knew what to not to take, knew it, like he knew it. He has it within him to do whatever the fuck he wants.
Yes.
And that's, it's amazing to me. Yeah. Did you see him on the 50th, this SNL 50th thing?
It was phenomenal.
Unbelievable.
And that was no rehearsal.
Right. He just becomes Tracy Morgan.
Yeah.
He just becomes Tracy Morgan. It's unbelievable.
Yes. And the thing about Eddie, Eddie a lot of times, especially COVID or post-COVID, germaphobe, right? Yeah. But you always go to the house, beautiful home, and you go sit there. And in 20 minutes, you're having a conversation, and he'll do Jake Hogan. Yeah. And you're like, hold on, are you doing me? And he doesn't consider himself an impressionist. You know what I'm saying? It's just I always say Will Smith, one of the biggest actors in the world, right? But he outworks everybody. Right. Tom Cruise outworks everybody. Eddie Murphy could have been born in a box in Calcutta, and he was going to be a star.
Yeah, I think the reason I'm not as big as Tom Cruise is I don't outwork everybody. Honestly, that's the thing. That's the thing that holds me back. I wish.
Don't be alone with Jake Hogan.
All right, so everybody who comes on Don't Be Alone with Jake Hogan is here to solve my problem.
Okay.
and one of the problems that I thought you'd be good to solve is because you've been working with Malcolm Gladwell and for some reason, and this is kind of funny to me because I've known you forever, but people have said, oh, well, you know, Kenya Barris has an eye on what's happening in the future, and sort of like, you know, he's not a prognosticator of society, but an observer of society, a grand observer of society. So the picture in the writer's room is the grand observer of society. So, okay. So from your perspective, what the fuck is going on with A, show business, and B, the world? and what should we be looking out for in terms of, what are you looking out for in terms of the world for your kids? What should we worry about most, and what's coming that's good?
I think that we're about to have like the greatest generation of activists ever made. Yeah. You know what I'm saying, honestly, like more than Vietnam, more I think what is happening is the greatest generation of social activists is right now being formed.
That would be amazing, considering it seems like the society is so apathetic. Like we're just letting everything steamroll over us.
I think that is true, but the ones who aren't. Yeah. That small, narrow group of young people who aren't apathetic, who aren't just letting social media and TikTok and materialism draw them, they are stronger, they're more resilient than anybody before them. And I think that I've seen it. the way that they talk with when you get a group of these kids together. I'm like, oh, this we're
When
gonna.
you say a large group of protesters, are you talking about your kids?
I'm talking about my kids. I'm talking about like some of my kids, not all of them, but I'm talking about their friends. I'm talking about the things that they actually want to stand up for.
Right.
I feel like, my daughter was having a conversation with me about, the trans conversation, right? And she was like, this is like the magic prestige trick. She was like, they're doing this so that they can go in your pocket here. She was like,
For sure.
this is not a conversation just percentage wise that requires the amount of conversation it has, but it causes a lot of distraction.
Right. It's a hot button issue that really affects almost no one.
Right. And it's not that it's not important.
Right.
But it's not as important as what they're taking out this pocket.
For sure.
You know what I'm saying? They're causing this huge disruption. You know what I'm saying? Gay marriage was this huge disruption that was caused. You know what I'm saying? And almost decided an election. You're causing this huge disruption. Now, she was like, pay attention to what the hand going in your pocket
When
is
we
thinking.
can find it, yes.
Education is being destroyed.
Everything is.
Immigration, which this country was founded on,
Right. Economic disparity
is being
it's horrifying.
the gap
and gets
is
worse.
insane.
Right.
Where you have 10 people.
I mean, but we're cool.
No, we're cool.
Yeah, that's right. All right.
I know some of those 10
Yeah,
guys.
exactly.
No, but when you have 10 people who control 98% of the wealth of the world.
Yeah, it's nuts.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's not, I don't think that's a crazy number. I think that's actually a true number. Like you have like 10 people who control, or 10 people along with companies who control 98% of the world.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That is insane, and that is, nothing good can come from that.
That's the thing. Everyone has health care and everyone gets to eat. You don't need to change society to make that happen.
No.
Society, that could happen today.
Very easily.
Yeah. I mean, there's really things like child care and elderly care. These are things that could happen with the richest country in the world if people just decided we should make that happen. And maybe we tax a little bit more of the people who are the most wealthy in the world.
Whoa.
I don't mean you specifically.
Whoa.
But no. But it's really, I mean, that's the thing. It's like you don't have to trade in everything to get some of these things to happen. Oh, I want to ask you something else. This is what I want to ask you, which I've never asked you before. You had this big deal after you coming off of Blackish. You had this big deal at Netflix. And at some point, you traded it in. What went into that decision to trade it in? Because if Netflix gave me a gazillion-dollar deal, it would take a lot for me to say, you know what, I'm out of here.
The deal I traded in for was still pretty large, but
no, I know. But I mean, went from Netflix, the hottest place, to
I did leave
CBS.
money on the table. I did it because at the time I wanted to have some ownership stake, and that was the big part. Was to have ownership stake in the studio, which no one really had done before. You know what I'm saying? I learned a lot. You learn more from your mistakes than your things. I don't know if it was a mistake or not, but like I also went to a company that at the time, just as things were happening, was in flux. Now we see Skydance.
Right.
That was starting kind of right when I went there during pandemic, so there was nothing I could do during pandemic, so I was hopeful. Then shortly after pandemic, writer's strike happened. Right. So that put a thing on it. Then right after that, the company sold, or has been in the process of selling. So I don't know if it was, just timing wasn't great. I've been really lucky, you know what I'm saying, recently. We kind of have geared back up. We have a lot of things, going. Movies kept me, you know what I'm saying, into things. That's why people are like, why do you do so much? And blah, blah, blah. And I hear so many people, they're like, he's not writing this, he's not writing that. And I'm like, no, I am writing. I was like, but I just constantly write. I absolutely, positively write with a form of people, you know what I'm saying, as a lot of people do, and I think is the best way. A lot of things I will write myself, and then we get to the form and we break it down. I think some of my favorite writers have done that. I won't, saying I think we all know them, but I feel like
I write, and I also need a group of people to tell me what's good, always.
100%.
And I'm happy to help people to say
100%.
This is what I think too.
I always used to say when I started this, I was like, I wanted to be the Black Judd Apatow, right? Because I just loved what he was doing and how he kind of took something that wasn't there, nerd chic and all that, and like made it a thing. Right. He has a group of people. He writes, but he has a group of people that he trusts that gets together, and that group has grown and grown and grown. And I use that format thing. I think that the ambition part of it is like seeing what podcasts were, and then all of a sudden saying like, well, how can I do it and not feel like I'm just being derivative and do something different.
This is where you and I disagree. I want to be derivative. I'm fine with it. As long as people subscribe. Even if they subscribe to my show. But I don't care if it's derivative. It's fine.
I wanted to do something that was that, and I also wanted to do movies. Was really interesting to me because comedy has to come back.
Yeah,
that is one of the things I really.
It's
really,
weird
really,
how it's gone away.
It kept the lights on forever, and I definitely think it has to come back. And I think it needs to come back to theaters. Yeah, not just on streaming. You know what I'm saying? Because Netflix did great with Nobody Wants This or Running Point or this that kind. But in general, it is not the same as a big Modern Family show, right? Or a big Simpsons, right? Or a big, Meet the Parents or Talladega Nights or Anchorman. I think that it needs to come back in a really, really, really big way.
Yeah, I wonder if, what the attention span or whether kids who play video games or watching YouTube, if that's changed the taste or the desire or the patience for people to watch stuff.
I honestly don't think so. Yeah. Because, kids like Drewski and Kai Cenat and, and I show, people, there's these streamers who are getting massive amounts of money and getting massive viewership. Right. And they just sit up and make jokes all day and with their friends. I think it's finding how do you sort of like help them structure that into what is a show.
All right, now it's time for our listener mail.
Now it's time for listener mail.
Dear Jay and guest, regarding the writer's room, what part of the job do you think is harder than the public would expect? And what part is easier than we might expect? From Ken. Thank you for the question, Ken.
I sent that in. That's my alter ego, Ken.
You sent that in?
Ken.
Oh my God.
No, I'm just kidding.
That's a terrible name for you.
My answer to that, and what made you, two things. There's two people, and I think Shonda is one example. Shonda, I've seen it happen. A story will be not working, and she can come in almost like a Beautiful Mind-esque way. This group of brilliant, Ivy League educated, blah, 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 and she can move and be like, this show here, it's show here, and you're like, oh shit, you're Shonda Rhimes, right? It's anyone who's ever worked for her, I dare you to tell me I'm wrong. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, she can find out where things can go, even if she's not in the room. But that's a special skill. But the other thing that I think you have, there's a guy named Pete Holmes who's a comedian.
I love Pete.
He had it, and he doesn't like being in a writer's room, but he's something really, really special. I've worked for this girl. I worked with Laura Guten. I think has it. Certain people I've seen, Lindsay Shockley, Jonathan Groff. But there is something to a person who can just off the cuff. This is why I always tell people, and comedians get so mad at me. I'm like, we should put this on Netflix. This is a show we should do. Comedy writers versus stand-ups. I will fucking every day, 7 days of the week, and twice on Sunday, take a comedy writer over a stand-up. You know what I'm saying? Because we every day have to come in with new material and throw out 100 jokes to fit into a script. You know what I'm saying? You're throwing out 10, 15, 20 jokes per thing, and you're doing it at a rapid pace. And some of those jokes are the funniest jokes we've ever fucking heard. You know what I'm saying? And the idea of getting those people who are able to do that. You're a joke gun. Pete Holmes is a joke. There are certain people who are just like, they can fire jokes and they don't get tired. They get tired, but they still will, like, you know what I'm saying, reload. And the idea of being around those people and like actually understanding that is a God-given gift. That is something that I don't think people understand, that those comedy writers are something special.
The thing about jokes, especially in a sitcom, is it's not just jokes. It's character. It's character. It's character, situation. In that moment, it's character.
Yes.
So you're putting your head in that character. You're becoming that character, just like when you were listening to your stand-up comedy voice and you heard that. You're sitting in that room and becoming a character. And so it's not even about jokes. It's about what's the situation.
In that character, for that situation, for that moment, that goes along with what's going on. And that's why I think comedy writing has actually taken a hit. because you get people in a room who don't have that.
Right.
And you start being like, oh, like, you know what I'm saying? You start feeling it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like those guys, when you started looking at shows and you're in a, can you imagine being in a room with like John Mulaney, you know what I'm saying? And just like, and some of those guys and like, who like literally the things that they think of.
But that goes to the other part of the question. Regarding the writer's room, what's the worst part of the job that people don't know? So now you're at a party with some of the greatest people. You're John Mulaney and all these people, and you're at a party with them for 6 months. Okay? It's not funny after a while. It's really kind of annoying after a while.
Yes.
And like you're sitting in the same room and hearing the same bits and the same thing. And it's like, that's the part that people don't realize, that we get used to each other.
Yes.
We get annoyed with each other.
We do.
And it gets tiring.
Yes, it does. And that's where the atrophy starts to kick in.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? When you're like, okay, you know what I'm saying? He's going to say this type of thing. Or I will even say the thing that I will tell you a lot of young writers is you can become sort of a weeping willow.
Yeah.
If you let yourself, when you're in the room with these big personalities who have that God-given skill, and you may not have that, but you have something else.
Right.
You got to find your thing.
Right.
And not let that person overshadow you to the point where it becomes like, you know what I'm saying?
You got to take your swings.
You got to take your swings.
Yeah. That's just it. I mean,
gotta
so like, and they're not all going to hit, and nobody's does, but
Yes.
you got to take your swings.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So, good answer. Well done.
Thank you.
Now we're on to the moment of joy.
A moment of joy.
What gives me joy? I think, this is the lamest thing, but it's going to be completely honest. I think, I'll say two things. As one of them's the gayest thing ever. I think putting together a great outfit.
Okay. All right.
I'm just going to be honest with you.
By the way, that is absolutely true of you. You're a guy who has put together outfits. You always have. I've always been impressed by it. And it's like the shoes match the pants, match the it's like, what the hell? And for every team, you had a jacket. For every team that you loved, you had pants. It all went together.
Putting together a great outfit gives me joy. You know
Now,
what I'm
is
saying?
that just because you're a fashion, you have a fashion sense, or is that just...
There was this moment in The Matrix, and this is going to sound like a really long route to go. Morpheus tells Neo, when he brings him into that white room, and Neo's just taking the pill, and he's like, why do we dress like this in The Matrix? He was like, that's your residual self-image. And I was like, oh shit. Like Wachowski said something really interesting, and I was like, that's what your clothes are. You know what I'm saying? And it doesn't matter if it's you with your hats, you know what I'm saying, or this with that, or you know what I'm saying, it used to be the Diet Cokes was like, but like there's things that tell the world this is who I am.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And being able to do that with clothes so that people know you before they know you, or have a sense of who you are before they have a sense of who you are.
Right.
And when you're able to do that and you're like, I like the way this looks, and it kind of says who I want the world to see me as,
right.
and it's not a false representation, and it's a real representation. That gives me a sense of joy. And going to a basketball game.
Those are two.
I love going to see live sports.
Right. Who's your team these days?
Clippers.
Okay.
Been the Clippers, gonna be the Clippers.
All right.
Even though 4 years, first round, out of playoffs, I'm gonna stick by us.
All right. Well, that's it. I mean, we're letting you go. I love you. Truly.
I love you too.
Truly love you. I don't
you too.
see enough of you. Sometimes you're hard to get a hold of. Since you become very big, you're hard to get a hold of.
That's the thing we connected on is humanity. We both have a desire to see the thing behind the thing behind the thing. And that's what we both sort of like kind of like found in ourselves. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so humanity is finding the humanity in people.
Well, Gladwell can call me, whatever. I could use a little advertising support for this show, but whatever.
I love that.
Well, thanks, Kenny, for being here, and thank you for being here. Please come back again next time and write me at dbawjk@gmail.com if you have a complaint or a compliment, and go spend time with a friend in person. It's so great. I love sitting here. You should do it yourself. See you next time.
Peace.
Don't be